Hello and welcome to The Promised Land, a show about Manchester United and part of the 90 Min Podcast Network. I'm Scott Saunders, joined by Rob Blanchette. As per usual, we are talking about a Man United performance which is found wanting, but Rob, at least we did get a response in the weekend win over Nottingham Forest. We'll jump into that early on in the show, but today's show is mainly, it's the final week of the transfer window. Transfer deadline date is on Friday. Players are getting linked with United here, there, and everywhere. United are getting desperate. We've seen this pattern before. They were getting desperate in that Forest game as well, Rob, weren't they? But they did. No, you were there. What were your immediate thoughts, even after the whistle, after the full-time whistle, not after the falling 2-0 down, but after the comeback?
Relief, of course. And, I often say that, if you get a win in any capacity in the Premier League, you should be kind of grateful for the victory. But we're looking a little bit deeper, aren't we, Scott? We're kind of scratching below the surface to see what this Man United team is made of. And the first kind of 10 to 20 minutes was pretty as bad as I've ever seen at Old Trafford. They were the kind of quote that I gave out after the game. And I remember looking at my watch at 20 minutes and just thinking, this is not good. There's too many things, dysfunctional, chaotic madness going on a football pitch. You just don't really expect to see. Doesn't look like an Erik ten Hag team in those moments. But yes, of course, they had plenty of time, didn't they, to come back into the game, and they used that time wisely, and they did improve through the match. Scott, those first 10 minutes, like those two goals, like the first goal was just a joke from back to front. You know what I mean? Just getting done on the sprint all the way, and Arna falling on his backside and the ball being pushed to one side, and it's a goal. But even the second goal from set piece, where everyone just kind of was like, oh, what are we doing? Oh, it's in the net because it hit someone in the face and went in the goal. And it's like it's comedy if you're not a Man United fan. If you're looking at that, you're laughing, aren't you? So I wasn't laughing and the stadium wasn't laughing. And thankfully, the stadium really pushed the team on and really helped them and, sang their hearts out. And, my throat's still a little bit sore all these days later. And that was good. But, Scott, a lot wrong, unfortunately. We're desperate to do content that's positive and like forward thinking and progressive. But Ten Hag's got a lot to fix with this bunch, and I really don't know why they're in this position as they are. Well, we've got ideas about why they're there.
Yeah, sorry. I realized people would like positivity. I did feel a little bit positive that at least they reacted. Because they don't really do that very often, or haven't done that very often. I thought the second half performance was good. Bruno Fernandes was really good. A lot of positives with Marcus Rashford back on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
They had 85 minutes essentially to get back into the game, and I think they forced the issue and it worked. They created a ton of chances, which is something we haven't really seen so far this season. Well, we saw it in the Tottenham game. They didn't take any chances, but at least they scored them this time. So, yeah, but let's not lie. There are issues to fix, and Arsenal are the next game at the Emirates, and they've got their own issues at the moment. But as it stands, Arsenal are looking in a far better place than United are based on performances so far this season. We'll be talking today, do a little bit more on the Forest game. We will talk, though, mainly about the transfer window and how many names have I written down? I have 8 names written down as potential. Well, 7 transfer targets and 1 potential exit, but I've also forgot Harry Maguire's name, and you want to talk about Harry Maguire. So we will do our best, because I think this week, as it's shaping up already, this week is going to be another chaos week where you see names literally pulled out of the sky and linked with Man United. So we'll discuss what we know so far. United are after a left back. They want some more presence in midfield. Is a striker out of the question? We'll see. But they've also got some exits to sort out as well. So we'll talk Harry Maguire, Scott McTominay, etc., etc. You can subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts and watch us on YouTube, The Promised Land, a Manchester United podcast as well. Like the video, subscribe, leave a comment for us. Hit the notification bell as well so you never miss a show. And follow us on social media at @_Scott Saunders on X, Instagram, and TikTok. at _Rob_B on Twitter and YouTube, and at Promiseland MU on Twitter, X, whatever it is as well. Anyway, let's come back to the Forest game to start, Rob. What did you say about that first 4 minutes? The worst 4 minutes worst opening to a game you've seen in a generation, or something like that. Is that what you said?
Yeah, they were my words. And I really did feel that, and that wasn't a kind of emotional reaction. That was me again, kind of going back to my kind of tactical mandate in my head about what am I looking at and what are they doing and why is that happening. And I'm telling you, Scott, they just didn't have a clue what they were doing. And yeah, cool. They did bring it back round and they did settle down. But you have to remember that this is Nottingham Forest you're playing. This is not a team that wants to excel this year in, say, the top 10 of the division. This is a team that wants to survive. Nottingham Forest are going to be very active in the next few days because they've got gaps in their squad. They have to do business. But they came to United, Scott, in those first few minutes. They wanted it. Man United didn't. That's a problem to me. Like, why do you not want it in that moment? Marcus sprinting back, chasing the striker all the way back to our box and just watching them all watch it was just peculiar. Now, you can sometimes get caught cold, can't you? But it's so rare that you see that and then it happen again that you can see 2 goals like that. Yes, you can see goals early. You can. But for me, that's why I came away and I thought, wow, that was probably the worst 10 minutes I'd seen under any manager post Sir Alex Ferguson. Like, absolutely. I can't remember it happening with Jose or with Van Gaal, even Moyes. I can't remember those things. Don't remember. Ole had some really weird performances, didn't they? There were times where they'd look great, other times look terrible. But I said to someone in the stadium, we were chatting about it, I went, sometimes in those first 10 minutes, like say that being the way the game had panned out, you start to wonder about whether the manager's got the players' heads in shape, like whether they're playing for him or not. Now, as the game went on, I think it showed that they really fought and they battled, but they were battling against a team, Scott, they should be beating, and they should be beating comfortably over, well, I'd say 90 minutes is now like 100 minutes in it per game. That's how it goes. So over 100 minutes, you should be beating a team like Nottingham Forest. You did beat them, but you beat them 3-2 and you beat them by slim pickings and margins. And I was happy, Scott, to see Marcus on the left. I think that's integral to United in the next few weeks, having any success and scoring goals. But you saw that Martial is just not ready. He's not ready. He's not played any pre-season. He can't help you. And again, the midfield for me had good moments, but also plenty of bad moments, plenty of times where they looked old and jaded and tired. Delo played all right at left back, but as I said last week, I'm not happy about him playing left back going forward in the rest of the season because he will make mistakes. There's too many players, Scott, at the moment.
Of the season, is it, Rob?
It's not the rest of the season, but we're talking periods that can ruin your season. So we're talking 6 weeks because of Luke Shaw's being out. That can wreck your season really quickly. Now, it's early on, but you can drop points and like not recover like Chelsea did last year. Chelsea had that period where Graham Potter couldn't buy a win. It doesn't mean Graham Potter's a bad manager. It's just that they couldn't buy a win. They couldn't get it together and they had a really bad season. So I'm not worried about United in that vein at the moment, but I do look at the personnel and I do think that they're not really fit for purpose. I thought Wan-Bissaka played really well at right back. Like, he seems to be getting better every week. Like, I watch him and I think he's got more up here, Scott. He's got it in here. He reads the game. He plays the ball on the deck now. He gets into midfield. You're thinking, yeah, I like this. This is the proper footballer now. So there's a few bits that you kind of go, great. But what happened? Varane, half-time, we said it on last show, got a knock, he's off. So these things are predictable, aren't they? Like, I don't know why there's any kind of conjecture or debate about it. It's really predictable. And it's what's happening in front of us. So, yeah, you can only move on to the next game. Do I feel confident going to Arsenal after they drop points and they'll be licking their wounds going, right, we want to smash Man United now? Not particularly. But then again, 2, 3, 4 days of the window left. You have got a little opportunity to fix some of these problems.
Yeah, let us know your thoughts on the Forest win. Obviously, it was quite a roller coaster. Yeah, as we mentioned, Bruno Fernandes there were some positives to take. I thought Bruno was absolutely brilliant, to be fair to him, but he should be. We need to see that consistently. That he's one of the most creative players in the league. And it shows up in the numbers. We just need to see him kind of taking the game by the scruff of the neck like he did more frequently, and especially in big games, because they're going to need some kind of personality to go to Arsenal and get anything, because United's record at rival teams in the top 6 especially is god-awful.
United season cannot be about Bruno Fernandes creating every chance. Like you're not going to win anything like that. You're not. Bruno, played his heart out, because that's Bruno, isn't it? He wears his heart on his sleeve and he fights, and he is a fighter. But he can't run the whole midfield on his own, Scott, from number 8. He just cannot. It's madness to think that is any recipe for success. So there were positives, as you said there, and I think that when you come out the back of it with a victory, that's what you have to just take. That's the biggest positive, that you won 3-2. But I thought Ten Hag afterwards, talking obviously primarily about the blue sky version of it, is that, I'm so pleased when my team fought and got what they got. You were playing Nottingham Forest. Next week you're playing a proper team, so let's see what happens against a proper team. No offense to Forest fans. Like, your team isn't good. I came away from that and thinking Forest didn't look particularly good at the end of it. I didn't think, but they nearly won that game. And a better team, I think, does, from a 2-goal head start, probably beat you on the day.
All right, let's move on to the transfer chat section, because there's plenty of players to discuss.
Guns for hire section.
You call these guns, Rob? Why are you calling them guns for hire?
Guns for hire, because these are players that you probably don't really want. They are people you're going to potentially bring into your football club because you're stuck because of what you've done. So I call them the guns for hire, because this is what happens in the last 4 or 5 days of every transfer window, is that teams in trouble, Scott, go, who can we get? Because we're so desperate, because that window is about to slam shut and we're going to get stuck. And United are looking at a ton of players that are all just guns for hire. They're not really looking at progressive, forward-thinking signings, are they?
Are these guns with blanks in them, or like
potentially?
I wouldn't call them guns anyway, because they're not really going to do too much, are they? Let's list off some of these names. Ryan Bertrand was last week. Marc Cucurella, Marcos Alonso,
great,
over the weekend. Leonardo Spinazzola from Roma, and Nicolas Tagliafico, a former Eric Ten Hag player, obviously, have been linked at the start of this week on Tuesday morning as well. United, I've just looked at some potential return dates for Luke Shaw and Tyrell Malacia.
Yeah.
There's an international break coming up after the Arsenal game, so that there is some time for those players to recover. I think expected return dates, according to one website I was reading anyway, or potential return dates, was there's a game on the 23rd of September. It could be longer than that, but we'll see. We don't have any definitive news on when either of them will return. But it seems like United are going to go for a left back before the window closes, probably on loan.
Mm-hmm.
All of those names there, Rob, which one inspires you?
Well, not inspired at the least, because you're looking at a market now of players who are either potentially failed at their football club or are kind of, bargain bin, aren't they? So when Ronaldo did the dirty on Man United and you had to go and get a striker, you could only get Weghorst. It was a January window. There wasn't a lot about. But Scott, you've had months to cover your back on a lot of stuff here, and you haven't done it. And you haven't done it because you haven't sold players.
Do you think though, like, I know Luke Shaw does get injured a lot, but you have decent depth at left back, really. Like, I know you push for Alvaro Fernandez to play, but he might go out on loan for some regular first team football, which might be the reason why.
Yeah.
You got Dallo who played there the other day and can cover it. Like, as much as you can level poor squad management at United here, are they just a bit unlucky that two of their two left backs have had long-ish term injuries at the same time?
Yeah, injuries are always bad luck, ultimately. But in contingency planning in football, you have to plan for bad luck. You have to look at your squad. Like you just said there, you've got coverage. United have got coverage in pretty much every position. But it means that if there's any kind of disaster of someone that's a real bona fide first team player and you lose one or two of them, then you're thinking outside the box. You just mentioned Malacia there. Malacia is not far away from being fit, but Malacia has had no preseason. He is not going to hit the ground running. So that's like pie in the absolute sky, isn't it? Like we can't think like that. We have to think in real terms. So United are now looking for someone who has got a preseason in their legs, who's ready to start potentially in the next match. And this is why I call it the guns for hire market, because it's only clubs that go into that marketplace when they are desperate. And you generally, Scott, end up with a player you don't want. So I think probably my brain, the way it's looking at it and what we've heard is that I think it will probably be more likely to be Marcos Alonso just because of the situation and what Man United are looking for. Can they get the player in quickly? Can they move quickly? A player who's got previous Premier League experience. But you know what, Scott? He ain't very good. It's as simple as that, right? But you're doing it because you're stuck. That's why I said last week I would rather see someone like Alvaro Fernandez blooded, because I think he can give you better long-term options and help him his development. But you're right. I think he will go out on loan. But you've always got this in almost every position, like in terms of the thirds of the pitch, Scott, haven't you? You've got defensive problems here now. You've even got to go get your goalkeeper finished and sorted. That might be done by the time you will watch this, guys, in our audience. We might have that goalkeeper finished and sorted as a backup. But you've got issues in midfield and you've got issues up top. That's a lot of issues for 4 days before the end of the window, isn't it? So you're now looking in marketplaces just to fill gaps. The prognosis on Luke Shaw, Scott, is that it might be longer than people think. So this is why United are going into that marketplace. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it. They're worried about that. Luke Shaw might not be weeks. It might be months because of the nature of the injury. Mason Mount, there is actually more positivity about, and they think that he'll come back quicker and he'll be okay. But Mason Mount gets injured, doesn't he? Like we saw it last year at Chelsea. He does get knocks. Varane has now got knocks, and you don't want to play your centre-back anymore, who was the captain only 5 minutes ago. So there's a lot to do now in 2, 3, 4 days for United. And it's really their own fault, isn't it? They've backed themselves into this corner, and now you're shopping in the bargain basement for just anyone that can help you.
You make Marcos Alonso the most likely. I disagree with that personally.
Who do you think?
Cucurella, I think, is the one that they're going for, and we'll see if Chelsea are able to let him go on loan.
Please, yeah, I'd be happy with that. Like you got Cucurella.
Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this thing, because I've seen, obviously, it's Marc Cucurella. You know, he did not have a good season at Chelsea last year.
No,
nobody had a good season at Chelsea last year.
No,
but this has caused supporters to fall into meltdown because he does kind of look like a bit of a disaster. But I made the point the other day, because like I'll put this out there. I don't really want this deal to happen, but if it's in the right conditions, given the circumstances, and that you need a loan to cover for the next 6 months or however long it is, I'd imagine this would be a season-long loan if they manage to do it. I don't think Sergio Reguilon is named as well. Rico Henry, we've got Bertrand, Tagliafico, and Spinazzola, as well as Cucurella and Alonso, etc., etc. I think personally that Cucurella is the best option of that. The best option in a bad circumstance is how I put it. By miles, you go that far.
Totally. Absolutely. Look at the names we're being linked with and the positions of what they're supposed to do. If you want to bring a player in now, Scott, for say a year loan or even a 6-month loan, but I think United will lean towards a year because that gives you the value. Cucurella, as bad as he has been at Chelsea, but so is absolutely everyone at Chelsea, it was only the year before that he was showing real upside. Pep Guardiola was desperate for him. Absolutely desperate. So you've got a player there that can play wing back, full back, and centre back. Now, Man United, we're just talking about coverage, aren't we? Yeah, and about who plays and who doesn't. You need players that are not just kind of not experts, but can really cover multiple positions. Malacia can play left back and right back. But you know what, Scott? If Luke Shaw gets injured for any more period of time or is out longer, do I have faith that Malacia can carry Man United to a top 4 position from fullback when fullback has become so important in the game? No. But do I think Cucurella can play left back and come in and invert into midfield and play ball on the deck and help United going forward, and sometimes play wing back and get up the pitch and overlap, and sometimes play centre back when you're a little bit stuck? Yeah, totally. He's not a complete nightmare. He's a decent footballer.
Well, I think people would disagree. I'm with you here, but I think people would disagree because in football, especially nowadays on social media, you have to talk in absolutes, and most people will say Marc Cucurella is a disaster.
Is Cucurella on my A list of buying players? No, not at all.
Well, totally, and I think this is the point you got to make.
No,
right?
You know, pre Luke Shaw getting injured, we were saying, "Oh, Man United are all right for coverage at the moment," and there we are. You get 2 injuries, you're not all right for coverage. So I think the thing is with Cucurella is that, it's gone terribly wrong for him at Chelsea. The fee that Chelsea paid at the time of £50 million was overpriced. We knew that at that time.
I think it was more.
It was a built-in, because they were trying to fight City and show that they could flex their muscle to get the player, and that's kind of what they did. They've kind of just done it with Casado, haven't they? Chelsea, they've spent 105 million on him, up to 110, 115, and they've done that to flex their muscle to show that they're Chelsea and they are what they are. Do you know what? I wonder if Casado has a bad season and people were saying that's value and a good deal. So
this is the thing. Like,
it's mad.
1 year ago, Chelsea paid 50 plus 60 odd million for Marc Cucurella, and he was he was Brighton's player of the year. One of the Man City wanted him, but obviously they have a cut-off point in terms of what they want to pay, and we've seen United beat City to players because they've been willing to pay more. Harry Maguire, namely. But he's not. I'm not saying for a second that I think this is a great deal, but in the circumstances, and he had a terrible season at Chelsea last year, but so did everybody. So you have to kind of look at it not based on last season, but based on kind of a wider period. And the season before, he was fantastic with Brighton, and Pep wanted to sign him, and Chelsea wanted to sign him to the point where they paid 50, 60 million quid for him. And just because Chelsea were an absolute mess of a club for 1 year and everybody suffered as a result, does it make Cucurella a bad player? I wouldn't call him one of the best left backs in the world, but I think on a loan basis, if you're not going to get the conditions of the deal right, if it can be a straight loan and maybe you pay his wages and no option to buy. I'm not saying let's get into options to buy or anything like that. A loan for a year just to cover, I don't think it's terrible.
If you're starving hungry, Scott, and you're sat at the table, you will eat the crust of the bread if you can't have a slice. It's just the truth. So that's where Man United are at the moment. And this is why I put a lot of blame on the doorstep of the football operations of the football club, because you shouldn't really be in this position. Now, yes, injuries happen, bad luck happens. That's where you are. But it's because you haven't done your business, Scott. That's why you are where you are. You haven't got the right coverage in your team. You've got minimum coverage, but as soon as you get some injuries, you're going to start biting your nails, aren't you? And that's where Ten Hag is. I think Ten Hag's looking at the squad now and going, well, hang on a second. You promised me that striker back who's been out for 18 months, but now you've sold him. That's probably the right decision. But now I want another forward at some point. And do you know what? My 2 left backs are injured, and I wanted that central centre back out on my squad who's on 200 grand a week, and you haven't done that. And I don't want Scott McTominay as a number 6, so and he's still in my squad, and I don't want that. This is difficult for Ten Hag. All these things are happening in real time for him in the training ground. So Cucurella, I look at it, is like not best of a bad bunch. I think there could be some upside to him if he comes to United and takes the opportunity. He could be very good for us, and I think he can play multiple positions. Do I want to sign Cucurella 6 weeks ago or 12 weeks ago? Or would we have mentioned him when we were on the tour? No, of course not. But this is where you are now. This is the guns for hire market. You are looking for players that will come to you for a price and that will help you for the short term. Cucurella, for me, has got the best opportunity to be a good signing. That's the way I look at it. He could come to the club and he could give you 6 months to a year of real good value. And then in a year, you might go, well, you can nab this guy of Chelsea because Chelsea are going to flog him now. And actually, he's pretty decent. And for 25 million, 30 million, he fits our squad profile and he's proved himself for us. Great. Is that going to happen with Marcus Alonso? No. So there are players out there that it's a kind of, again, a scale of diminishing returns, as I call it. And there are players that can help you immediately, but you've signed an Alonso. Guess what, Scott? He probably sits behind Malacia in the pecking order when Malacia is fit. So what are you doing there? Like, it doesn't make sense. I think Cucurella could be a player that forces his way into the first team, But that again is a roll of the dice, Scott. It's all gambling. And United have put themselves in this situation once again because they haven't done their business, haven't sold the players they're supposed to, and they haven't got the money to then go into the market and be a proper football team, like go in there and aggressively flex their muscle as Manchester United. That's a shame, but that's on them, isn't it? That's not on us. We can only kind of call what we see.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens here. I'm looking at the season that Cucurella had with Brighton before the Chelsea season. He did score in that Brighton 4 United 0 game. Remember that?
He was great that season. Like, he was the best fullback in the league that season. Like, he really was. He had everything going forward, and everyone loved his kind of swashbuckling style. He could beat people on the turn. He could really go. He really could push Brighton forward in that team. And no one blinked. When he went to Chelsea, everyone thought he was overpriced, but everyone thought he had quality.
For 20 million less, I think everyone would have said that's a very, very good. He's a great player, very good deal.
Absolutely. And in social media times, like you mentioned, people always judge things by those things, and it's the same old, same old. But I think when you look at him, Chelsea have failed in the last 12 months. Not just Cucurella, like the whole team has failed. Graham Potter was coming in for what? 7 years, a 7-year project, and lasted 7 minutes. So they want to clear their decks. That's obvious. They're going to be active in the market, Scott. But then they're not particularly buying players to fill gaps. They're trying to buy players to push their project. And that's the shame about Man United, is that doesn't feel like that now. I think Mount was. I think Onana was. And then you stopped. Then nothing happened. You couldn't sell players. You didn't move the players out. So I think Cucurella is a decent player, and I would be happy in the circumstances for him to come. Football fans that don't want him, Scott, that's understandable. But I think that football fans also have to get realistic as to where Man United are now in his next 4 days going into the end of this transfer window. Having Cucurella is better than not having him. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
Because I really do not want to rely on what you've got in those positions. What happens, Scott, if you get an injury now to Wan-Bissaka and Dalot? So they both get injured in training today. Yeah. What are you doing? What's the plan? I don't know. Do you? So there's positions at the moment where I kind of go, these things can happen, and you're foolish if you believe that they can't. So you have to have contingencies. You have to have players, young players. That's why I talk about youth. You've got to have players who can play the position, and even if they make mistakes, at least they can play it, and you can develop them and maybe get something out of them. Instead, you're going into the transfer market looking for your next vague horse. That's on Man United, isn't it? That's not a great way to do business.
Yeah, as much as you want to, you can look at the United transfer team, the people at Murta, Ten Hag and all that. You can look at them and then look at what Chelsea are doing and then think, why aren't we buying players all the time who are our long-term fixes? The ownership is the difference. The ownership is the difference. There was a protest at Old Trafford after the game the other day. Did you stay for it?
I was there, yeah.
Yeah. So, this is the thing. United are hamstrung, and the fact that United are all of these people that are trying to do, put United back on the straight and narrow in the right direction. All of these problems that they're trying to fix have come under the ownership of the Glazer family. Yeah. And usually under Ed Woodward, who's made some terrible decisions, and they're still cleaning up the mess. So as much as, they deserve criticism at times, of course they do, but their hands are tied to the point where, the Glazer family and Ed Woodward have put United in this position where it's going to take them years to fix it. And until the ownership changes, they're gonna try and protect their cash. They don't have any cash really, so they have to do what they got to do until the ownership changes. I don't think it'll change.
I agree with that. Obviously, the kind of rotten core from the Glazers, what they've done to our football club is obvious for all of us to see. But I'm not going to let the football team off on this one, Scott. They have autonomy. They can build and sell, and they can do a certain amount of business. And they could have sold players, Scott, before that. But what did they do? They played a game of Monopoly. We don't.
Would you have given Harry Maguire 12 million quid to leave?
I wouldn't have given him 12 million quid. I'd have done a deal with West Ham.
That's what he wanted.
I'd have done a deal with West. I would have done a deal with West. Look, okay, this is what's happening at the moment. West Ham have come back to Man United, exploring a way that Harry Maguire gets his money and they get the player. That's what they want. It'll probably end up being a loan deal, and that can happen. But the longer you've left it and just sat on it, and you were happy to just have this substitute at 200 grand a week, that is stupid, Scott. So that's on them. That is on them. So now they're
Who's
going
that
to be,
on? Like,
that's
who's
on
that
the
on?
football. That's on the whole football staff of Manchester United that do.
So that the
things.
existing football staff made the decision to give Harry Maguire that contract.
They did, and when they told Harry,
was there.
So when they told Harry Maguire that he was being stripped of the captaincy and he was no longer wanted at Man United, did they think this player was just going to walk out the club without being paid? If you think that, you shouldn't be running a football club. That's not how it works. That's not business. So West Ham are desperate for the player. They want Harry Maguire. Harry Maguire wants a good situation. I'm sure he's looked at West Ham the first 3 games of the season and thought they look quite good. I could help them. But Harry Maguire should not leave Manchester United for a penny under the value of that contract. He shouldn't do. What are United doing? Rather than moving him out and taking a slight hit on it and then balancing the books elsewhere in the squad, both in purchasing and selling, they just sat on their hands and went, well, you can sit on our bench for a year. Scott, that ain't good business. That just isn't. So it's on the team. It's on the actual purchasing team behind the scenes. I don't blame Ten Hag. Ten Hag is desperate for this player to leave. Absolutely desperate, to the point where he's gone out and taken the armband off him and made it overtly clear that he wants him gone. Harry Maguire shouldn't leave for a penny under the value of what his contract says. United need to pay him off. That's up to United. That's not up to Harry Maguire.
You just said you wouldn't give him 12 million.
I would negotiate and find a way towards that 12 million.
I
would work with West Ham. I'd work with West Ham and say, if you want this player, you're going to have to pay this amount of the loan fee, which is a higher percentage than what you want to do. But if you want the player, we need to get the player gone now.
Well, let's talk about this.
Too late, Scott.
Oh, you've loaned out Harry Maguire without a replacement.
That's what's going to happen.
Are you sure?
That's not what I think.
Are you absolutely sure?
I think that's what's going to happen. I've said all along, Harry Maguire will leave on transfer deadline day, and I'm sticking by it. I'm sticking by it for these reasons. Man United want him gone. West Ham want the player.
On the condition of a loan where they're going to pay probably some of his wages anyway.
They will pay.
To be there.
I think they'll pay over what they wanted to pay in a straight deal because they're going to get him on loan. So they'll pay a little bit more because it doesn't affect your books in years to come. It doesn't affect you, a player earning 200 grand a week, if you're paying it now, because in a year you can say we're not doing this anymore. He's on loan. So I don't think there's going to be any compulsory purchase order. I don't think that's going to be negotiated at this late stage. But West Ham want the player, and the player wants to play football, and the player knows that he's not going to play football at Man United. And Harry Maguire has publicly said, happy to fight for my place. But how can you fight for your place when Varane gets injured and you don't even get a sniff? So let's not live in some kind of weird promised land that doesn't exist. Let's live in reality.
You've just spent time criticizing United for not having a plan after their 2 first-choice left-backs have been injured, and yet you're saying we'll go through the season with 3 left-backs just because.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that's what they're going to do
because he's on too much money.
They're going to do that. That's what they're going to do because they haven't sorted this out. So you're going to now let a player go potentially who you really believe, as a manager, Erik ten Hag really believes that Harry Maguire can't help him. He talks a load of garbage to us in the press about what he thinks Maguire can do, because that's the right thing to do. You know, you shouldn't kill the player publicly. I don't think anyone wants Mourinho again to kind of attack players. But Harry Maguire absolutely knows he has no future at the football club. And Manchester United have been doing their very best in weeks gone by to bin him. But bin him by making him take the hit. Like saying, we'll give you 4 million even though we owe you 12. I don't think he's going to get 12, Scott, but he will get a percentage more than 4. Like 4 is the 6, 7, 8, 9. Who knows? Like we're not doing that business. But I think United will have to pay through the tooth to get rid of him because they are desperate to get rid of him. Do you know what, Scott? One of the things I'm going to say this, and this is a kind of, again, this is a lateral thought. I think maybe this season has started badly because you've still got players in your squad that you've told you don't want. That creates a bad vibe at the training ground. So you've got senior players at your football squad. Scott McTominay knows that he's not wanted. So he's a good, honest pro. He'll keep fighting for United. But it's not a good look behind the scenes, is it? You haven't got a happy, harmonious camp. You've got players that have actually been told that the manager thinks you're rubbish. So that's a problem. So United have to address that problem, Scott. I wouldn't personally get rid of a centre-back and not bring another centre-back in.
But you think they will?
I think they will, yeah, because I think this is a dysfunctional setup behind the scenes.
You think that they're silly enough? And maybe they are.
Definitely.
They're silly enough to have a half-fit Rafa Varane, Victor Lindelof, and Lisandro Martinez plus an injured Luke Shaw as your centre-back options. So that's
I
two and a half centre-back options for the entire season.
I think that they are silly enough because you've only got to look at what they've been doing the last few weeks and what they've done for years. You've just mentioned the Glazers there and about how it goes. This is not a problem that has been going on for 10 minutes.
What do they stand to gain to get Harry Maguire out on a loan without a replacement? I'm conditioning all of this on without a
£800 a
replacement.
month off your bottom line. Like, that's what they think. They're businessmen. You know, Man United are accountants behind the scenes. That's what they are. They're not particularly football people. So no offense to them, like in terms of John Murtough. I'm sure John Murtough would have loved Kim Min-jae, and you could have gone and done that business because you were going to try and do that business, and then you didn't because, like Harry Maguire, you couldn't move him quick enough. But Kim Min-jae's now somewhere else, so you just got to do what you got to do. So I still think United might say move Maguire on and then immediately go into that guns for hire market, as I call it, and find themselves a centre back for 6 months to go and sit on the bench. It's not a good way of doing it, Scott. But
if
you're not telling me you don't think that they could do that. You know, Man United as well as I do.
We're having different conversations.
Yeah,
you're talking about them letting Maguire go without a replacement. I'm talking letting Maguire go with a replacement, which I think they could do. They could do, but I don't think they're going to leave themselves short. Anyway, we'll see.
I think if they could get 800 grand a month off their books, which is a whole lot of money, when you've got none, you've got no money, that is a lot of money because it means that between now and the next transfer window, you've saved that every month and it goes into your kitty and you can go into next year's window, have saved that £200,000 a week wage. And that's what Man United have been trying to do with Harry Maguire all along. That is why Harry Maguire has gone, well, I'm not leaving because you're trying to get rid of me because of my wage. So why should I go? Like, you take the hit, not me. So that's why I don't blame Harry Maguire. I've seen so much on socials, people blaming him for not moving and that's his fault and all this. No, it's up to the business to move him on. And United haven't greased his palm enough to get him out of the football club. And that happens all the time, Scott. If you've got your Aubameyang in your team, Scott, you have to pay him to move him. That's how it goes. It's what Arsenal did. That's what every football club has had to do. Chelsea have been doing it now for weeks with players, paying them off, getting them out, putting players on these long-term deals. Man United haven't got players on 7-year contracts, but you look at Harry Maguire, he is your David De Gea now, isn't he? Like, David De Gea was on a huge wage, 350 grand a week, plus Harry Maguire's, his Champions League bonuses are about to get activated, Scott. You need to get him off your books. Like, and you probably will roll the dice and take the hit that your centre backs will stay fit, which of course is a stupid way of gambling, isn't it? Like we've just seen with Varane. But you're going to say, well, we've got Victor Lindelof. That's how they're doing it, Scott. That's how they're doing it. And I really hope that, I wish they'd gone out and bought a centre back to get for Maguire. You know, Todibo's still there potentially, but I don't think they're not going to do a deal like that where.
If they can get him on loan with an option, I don't make it impossible, but one of them needs to have to stand to get on that. I mean, I don't agree really that they'll just. We'll find out by Saturday morning.
We will,
you know, on if they're gonna let us know in the comments if you think United should just get rid of Maguire, regardless of if they get a replacement for him. There's not really anybody in the youth system to.
That's not my opinion.
That's what the whole conversation we've just had.
I'm just saying, I think that's what they're going to do. Like, it's completely different to my opinion. My opinion would have been sorting it out weeks ago because that's what good business does and not being where you are today. You're here today because of you, not because of the player. You're there. That's my whole argument. And that's why United are in this guns for hire market, because you're now looking for players that really you don't want, that you haven't scouted. You're just desperate. And that's on you again. That's just how it is.
We've mentioned Scott McTominay.
Yep.
And could this happen? Scott McTominay to Bayern Munich?
Potentially. Like, obviously, we know that the
noise is coming from Bayern's side.
And Bayern like him, and they see him as someone that can help them in terms of their squad. I think, again, a player that's surplus to requirements in Manchester United. The difference between McTominay and, say, Maguire is the wage. So there isn't really, I don't think, a rush to push McTominay out the door. But Scott McTominay, like Fred, knew that this is all over now. And Fred then went, right, I'm off, see you later. And Scott McTominay knows that as well. So I think Scott McTominay to Bayern Munich could be a goer. You know, like if you're going to maybe trade him out for a Gravenberch, great. But what if Gravenberch turns up and isn't much cop or isn't ready or whatever? Then you've just moved one of your, you know, rotational pieces out. So there's a lot of risk in all of this still, Scott. But I think that is a goer because, again, he's on that list of players that that Ten Hag really wants out the football club because he wants to fill those spaces with players that he wants?
Yeah, I mean, I think this can happen. I generally do think this can happen.
Tuchel likes him. Tuchel's spoken well about him in the past. Like he's spoken in the past that he likes Scott McTominay. So we'll see.
Tuchel did into that team? Anyway, United, if they are to let him go, we've obviously mentioned we had a conversation. I think it was last week at some point. You can't really let Scott McTominay go because you don't have any other defensive-minded players. Like, I mean, Scott McTominay at least does cover ground and is able to tackle. We know that United's midfield can't tackle currently. And he came on the weekend. But how do you replace him? There are conversations. Obviously, we've mentioned Ryan Gravenberch a fair bit. He said that he doesn't know what's going to happen. I think he could move this week, potentially, whether that's to United or to Liverpool or to somebody else, but a different profile player completely to Scott McTominay, someone able to carry the ball, good on the ball, really. I think United could do with a Ryan Gravenberch, and Erik ten Hag tried to sign him last year before he went to Bayern. Pierre-Emile Højbjerg is the other one, though. Are you excited, Rob?
Like my whole diatribe.
You need to, for the benefit of the audio listeners, which is a large chunk of our listeners, actually, you need to tell them what you're doing.
Right. For those who need the kind of audio explanation, I've got my head in my hands when he mentioned, obviously, Højbjerg. But this is, again, why my whole 10-minute diatribe about what Man United are trying to do or what they're doing in the marketplace is real. Yeah, it's not my opinion, it's what they're doing. And if you're going to end up with a Højbjerg because you're getting rid of a McTominay, that is not a progressive move, is it? That's not a way of fixing a problem. That's called having a leak in the roof, Scott, and just letting the water pour through for a little bit longer because you can't afford to mend it. So Højbjerg, no. Gravenberch, maybe. I think he's a decent player. As you said, a completely different profile. You've seen Amrabat's team behind the scenes are absolutely gutted that Manchester United have done what they've done over the last several weeks because they negotiated the deal. They went to them. They said, we want the player. We really want the player. And now the player isn't even being allowed to train with his team and is obviously going to exit the football club. And Man United is still here 4 days before the end of the window and they haven't negotiated a fee and haven't gone back. So really, Scott, the choice here should be Amrabat or nothing. He's the guy you scouted. He's the guy you wanted. You went to go and do that business, then you put the brakes on it. Then you couldn't get McTominay out to West Ham. Why? Because you got greedy. You wanted a bigger price. Oh, no, he's maybe worth 40 million. No, he's not. He just isn't. Not in the marketplace. And then you look at someone like Amrabat, who is ready-made to come in. Now, Amrabat doesn't solve everything for me. But I do think when you look at his metrics, especially things like ball carrying and tackling and stuff like that, he will be able to help Casemiro more. But Casemiro shouldn't be having a bodyguard next to him. He should be having a footballer. Do you know what I mean? So I think that Amrabat is the best value on the market and someone that might be able to give you, 2, 3, 4 years of good service. Gravenberch, I think, could do that as well, but that would only be a loan deal. But it's a mess again, isn't it? You're looking at a key position and you could have gone and bought someone and then kind of pushed players out and moved the pack around. Kind of feel sorry for Scott McTominay. He's been a good servant to Man United. And again, he's just left to
Hey, if he joins Bayern Munich, don't feel sorry for him.
Look, if he goes to Bayern Munich, good luck to him. And I think he deserves something more. I think he would have gone to West Ham and helped West Ham a lot. But I think, again, United got greedy with the price. And it's just what it is. Football clubs do that. It's not new. But United have to make sure whatever comes in, Scott, isn't just an exhibitzer. It isn't just to plug a hole. It has to be someone that can help you grow the team tactically, technically, physically, win more matches. If you want to be a top,
you're telling me Pierre-Emile Højbjerg will do that?
No, of course he doesn't. And I think the interesting thing here is that Postecoglou wants Højbjerg out because he cannot play his style of football. And his style of football is the counter press and playing high up the pitch. What are Man United trying to do this year? Play higher up the pitch, more counter press, and as Erik ten Hag said, be the best transitional team in the world. Does Højbjerg help you do that? No. So why are we having the conversation? So we're having the conversation because United are in a pickle. So no, I don't want to see Højbjerg come, though I don't not rate him. I think as a defensive midfielder, typical Mourinho type 6, destroyer, jump into tackles, hurt people, pull players down in parts of the pitch to slow the game down. Yeah, he has his uses. But Man United need technical players who can also do the all-round game. I think Amrabat is probably the closest on the market. But if I'm Amrabat now, I'm probably thinking, oh, this team's messed me around now for months. Like, do I really want to go there? Like, I'm sure Erik ten Hag's in his ear because they know each other, and Eric's probably saying, sit tight, be patient, be patient. That's what happens quite a lot in these deals. But I would not be surprised to see Amrabat in the next day or two end up at another football club who go and pay the fee for him, get him on a plane, get him there, and he'll be doing his welcome video on social media before we know it, and we'll all be going, Man United are still trying to negotiate Scott McTominay to leave the football club. So this is why I don't feel great about all of this, Scott. I sound like I'm ranting, but that's I'm on the edge of that.
This is not a ranting show, Rob.
No, it isn't.
But
we're heated because we're in this position. Like, it's not all good.
Let us know. I'll ask you this question before we go. How many players will United sign before Friday at 11 p.m. UK time?
2.
Who?
I think, okay, if I'm just gambling, I think one will be Marcus Alonso. That's just what I think. And I think the other, fingers crossed, will either be Gravenberch or Amrabat. That they just pulled. They might look at the Amrabat deal now and go, "This is like way better than anything else we can get at the moment." And in that mid-20s to up to 30 with add-ons, that would make total football sense. The problem with that, Scott, is I don't know whether the business side of it like it. I don't know if they will want 30 million leaving the books over the next 12 months in a deal because they've kind of run out of money. They haven't moved players on. So, I think more likely to see players go out, Scott, and players come in, like, Donny van der Beek-esque, is that you'll find players leaving. But I do think United will bring 2 in. It just might not be 2 that really...
We're not counting the goalkeeper either, because Dean Henderson's going to leave. And
no, he's definitely coming. So I think that's again might be done before you actually watch your show. You might be seeing it. The Man United are announcing their new goalkeeper. He's 6'5", and
is he 6'5"?
Yeah, and you've just spent £4 million on him. And it's like, okay, cool. That's you need to do something there. So it is what it is. But it's kind of non-signing, isn't it, for me? It's not exactly exciting. It's not going to help you win more football matches, just coverage. And I do think the 2 coming in, I don't think United are in that market to maybe make a splash where they kind of go, actually, that player needs to leave. He's worth 50 million and he's good. And we're just going to go do it. That's not the way it smells at the moment. I think United are purely looking at, as I said, guns for hire. They're looking at players that can just help them, as opposed to like a progressive signing. But I'd be happy with like Cucurella. Like, I'd be delighted if they got Cucurella. I'd be delighted if they got Gravenberch in. I think it's a good player development project. And I'd be over the moon with Amrabat. It doesn't feel like United are going to go and buy anyone in the forward positions as it stands.
Yes, we shall see what United do over the next few days. Leave a comment for us with what you think United will do before the transfer window closes as well. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. That's it from us today. Wherever you get your pods and watch us on YouTube, the Promised Land and Manchester United podcast. Like the video, subscribe, leave a comment for us as well. Pop the notification bell on so you don't miss a video, and follow us on social media at @_ Saunders on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at _Rob_B on YouTube and Twitter, and at Promised Land MU on Twitter, as I'm still calling it Twitter. And we'll be back. What time will we be back on Friday, Rob? Usual time, or are we going to wait and see? I don't know.
I think, do you know what? The next 2 or 3 days, I think will dictate that, because we will kind of know what United are trying to do behind the scenes. Like, we will know some of the activity and the movement, and agents will be going chip, 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 talking away about what their players are wanting to do and what they're doing with Man United. So we'll see. I think we'll see. But I do actually think it's going to be a busy last few days for Man United, because they're actively looking
desperate.
To plug. They're so desperate, Scott.
Desperate, busy, yeah.
They are so desperate. And this is exactly what we always say every year is, don't get into that position. Don't get where you're desperate the last 4 days. Because you know what, Scott? People fleece you. Clubs fleece you. Players fleece you. Agents fleece you. So United, I think, might be backed into a corner. Like, fingers crossed, Scott, no one gets injured in training today. Like, that's how you're thinking now. Because if you get another 1 or 2 injuries, you're going into this Arsenal game depleted. So, and let's hope, obviously, that our injured players do come back sooner rather than later. But the news on Luke Shaw doesn't look particularly great at the moment. So I think we will be seeing a new left back starting even against Arsenal. It might be Delo.
I don't think so.
Or it might be Marcus Alonso. Yay!
I don't think that.
Let's hope it's Cucurella.
United are in the Champions League draw. That takes place on Thursday as well. So by the time we're back, we'll talk. Well, there's a lot to talk about by the time we're going to do another video. Arsenal game on the horizon, transfer deadline day, Champions League draw, etc., etc. We'll talk about all those when we see you next. Should be Friday. Don't know what time. We'll see what's going on. We'll try and be as finite and as definite as. I hope United don't hand in deal sheets to get any deals done. Let's just say, prefer to get the business done.
That could happen
3 months ago, but we are where we are. We're here again.
Deal shoots will be happening. I'm guarantee it's going to be right at the end of the window as they're desperate to kind of get some kind of players over the line.
Oh, how exciting. Anyway, thanks everyone for listening or watching. We'll see you soon for another Promised Land episode. And enjoy the week. It's going to be chaos.